Online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. You heard Mike Scott talking about it in his newscast. The expectation that when the Illinois General Assembly returns after the first of the year for their lame duck session, that they'll move more gun confiscation legislation. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. That's what we wanted. That's what we voted for, so that's what we're going to get. Go after, quote-unquote, assault weapons, ban the possession of standard magazines holding more than 10 rounds, raise FOID eligibility to 21.
I mean, we're one of 4 states that have FOID cards, and that didn't even work as a line of defense against a Highland Park shooter.
Firearm restraining orders extend from the current 6 to 12 months. You see this happening, and, well, obviously with the big guy, Mr. 10%, and the White House continue to prattle on about assault weapon bans. That's going nowhere with the Republican takeover of the House. In addition to that, Colorado, after the Club Q shooting, talk about red flag laws, talk about gun bans as well, whatever restrictions they think they can get away with under current Supreme Court jurisprudence, they're going to move in blue states that are lorded over by politicians who've always wanted to ban guns and still want to ban guns. They'll take what they can get. For more on what is afoot across the nation in blue state America, pleased to be joined by John Lott. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, former senior advisor for research and stats at the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Policy, author of books including Gun Control Myths and More Guns, Less Crime. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you. No surprise what you're hearing and seeing from Democrats in Illinois, Colorado, California, New York.
Right. Well, just a week ago, Biden was talking about banning all semi-automatic guns. Right. I don't know if most people understand that means that about 85% of handguns are semi-automatics. A similar percentage of rifles are semi-automatics. Biden claims that there's no kind of possible benefit that people could get from owning a semi-automatic gun. And I guess it's not too surprising that Biden doesn't think about self-defense. But if somebody has to fire more than one round from their gun to defend themselves, they may wish that they had a semi-automatic. I mean, if you want to go and ban all semi-automatic rifles, the alternative is a manually loaded bolt-action rifle. And if you face multiple criminals, or if you fire and miss, or if you fire and wound but don't incapacitate the attacker, you may not have the luxury of time to go and manually reload your gun. I mean, a semi-automatic gun is you pull the trigger, one bullet comes out, it reloads itself, you pull the trigger, one bullet comes out, and so on. But, these individuals don't think about people being able to go and defend themselves. And you go and you ban these guns, it's going to be the law-abiding good citizens who turn in their guns, not the criminals. I mean, Chicago has seen that before with the handgun ban that they had. That didn't stop the criminals from getting it. Didn't stop the drug gangs from being able to go and get the guns any more than we've been able to stop the drug gangs from getting the illegal drugs that they sell.
Well, what do you think it's going to? What do you think it's going to look like if they have an assault weapons ban in Illinois? Were people going to go door to door collecting people's weapons?
No, what I think will happen is that if you end up using the gun in self-defense, or if the police have to go into your home for some other reason, then they'll go and, you'll be charged with these additional crimes. The Biden administration has been putting together a national gun registry. At the beginning of this year, they had put together about 1 billion transactions that had occurred over decades. It's one of the reasons why they've been trying to work with credit card companies and others to be able to go and have a list of whether or not you purchased a gun, or they've been working with FedEx and UPS to see whether people are sending guns through those services, because the billion transactions that they have are kind of missing some of the most recent ones. And so they're trying to use these other ways of trying to fill in the blanks that they have. But right now, they have a massive computerized database where, in theory, a federal agent can put in your name, and they can know whether or not you own a gun, and they can use that, if they do go door to door, to identify it. I mean, that's what's happened in California and New York and Connecticut when they've had their assault weapons banned. They have known who owns the guns. Illinois hasn't had quite the same list, but the federal government will be able to fill in the blanks for them if they do decide to go that way.
Another front on the topic of law and order is border security. And it turns out that when you don't have border security, if you don't have sensible immigration policy, whether it's in the United States or whether in Western Europe, that so many in the United States like to point to say, why can't we be more like them in terms of the incidence of violent crime? Well, they're becoming more like us because of lax immigration enforcement, as you wrote about recently.
I mean, Europe has a lower murder rate, but they have a higher violent crime rate than the United States does. One thing, though, in Europe is they have much better data in terms of the number of immigrants or illegal immigrants that have come into their different countries. I mean, the United States, we have a very rough idea of the number of illegal immigrants that have come into the country as a whole, but we don't have the data state by state. In the European Union, for example, they do have that data state by state. Also, they have a lot better data knowing the composition of the prison population. They can tell you how many people in prison are non-citizens, for example, and you can see whether they're disproportionately represented in countries like Sweden and Denmark and Norway and Finland. You'll find that non-citizens in prison are about 2 to 4 times more than their share of the population. Illinois can't tell you the percentage of their prison population that are illegal aliens. Virtually all the states in the United States refuse to keep that type of data. Texas is one place that does have that information, but they're alone in terms of modern data.
And in Sweden too, that has led to a course correction policy-wise when it comes to immigration.
Right. Well, both in Sweden and Italy, in elections this year, you've had changes in political control of parliament because of, in large part, because of concerns about violent crime. And Germany this year and Hungary have seen 25% increases in homicide in just 1 year. You've seen across the board about a 9% increase in homicide rates across the European Union. And the countries that have seen the biggest increases in non-citizens in their countries have seen the biggest increases in homicide. Over the last 11 years, each 1% increase in the number of non-citizens in the country has been associated with about a 3.6% increase in that country's homicide rates.
Well, and part of this, it's just that this is not any endemic to any particular country or country of origin when it comes to immigrants, but it's a commentary on the rule of law. So they have illegal immigration in the EU just as we have here. I know by one estimate, you reported in your piece that you did with James Varney over at RealClearInvestigations.com, about 10% of those who emigrated to EU countries over the last decade did so illegally. So here again, we go with people that want to go through a process to immigrate to another country legally for the purposes of bettering their lives or family unification or whatever. That's one thing, and it'd be interesting to really separate out those two cohorts. To underscore the point that people that don't want to follow law to enter a country probably more likely to not want to follow other laws when they get into the country.
Yeah, there was some data that Arizona had some years ago, which indicated that people who came legally into the United States had a very low crime rate, lower than the average Arizonan. But people who came in illegally would have much, much higher violent crime rates in general. They had, about a 75% higher rate of murder, had a couple 100% higher rate of rapes. So there was a huge difference between those who came in legally and those who came in illegally. And it seems like you have a similar pattern in the countries in Europe that collect that type of data.
He is John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, former senior advisor for research and stats at the DOJ's Office of Legal Policy, author of books including Gun Control Myths and More Guns, Less Crime, that is. John Lott, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being there. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Hello, my name is Gina. When I first found out that I was pregnant, I was in a very dark place. I was living out of my car or on the streets, working as a dancer at a nightclub, heavily into drugs and alcohol, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with having a child. People look at someone living like I was and say, that's why we need abortion. I didn't need an abortion. What I needed was help. So Aid for Women helped me move into Heather's house. They gave me everything. A place to stay, clothes, food, a listening ear, help with my daughter, everything. To learn more about my story, watch my video, and support this great organization, go to helpaidforwomen.org. That's helpaidforwomen.org. You can help save lives and souls like mine from abortion today.
Aid for Women offers women real choice. They really do terrific pro-life work. Please step up and support this great organization. Go to helpaidforwomen.org.
All right, we're doing it, but we need your help. Our goal this year and our Food for the Poor campaign is to feed over 1,300 families of four. We ask for one-time